I have a girlfriend like that.
I like people that are always ready. All right, we're rolling. I'm
Okay.
Pittsburgh Pat. I'm here with Pete Geissler, who you might recognize from our previous video where we talked about his book about the man who invented the Ferris wheel, who actually lived in Pittsburgh for a while. He's an author, teacher, and publisher. And today we're going to talk about the publisher part, and he's going to teach us how you get published, right?
Yeah, that's good.
How do you do that?
Well, with a great deal of effort. That's the first thing. Everybody has a book in their head, supposedly, right? Everybody.
I've heard that.
Yeah, everybody. It's an old cliche from many years ago. But the problem is, a book in your head is easy. A book out of your head and into a manuscript, and then a real book that people can hold in their hands and read, or hold on their Kindle now and read. That's the hard part.
Right.
But it's not really the hardest part of publishing. The hardest part comes after you get the blasted thing done, it's finished, and then you have to market it. Market is probably 60% of the effort. Some people say that. So how do you get it out into the public's mind?
Yeah.
It's a process that goes from your mind to the reader's mind.
My mind.
And there's you don't have a mind.
It's like a Vulcan mind meld, almost.
It's a what?
You remember Star Trek with a Vulcan mind meld? He's like,
mind meld, yeah.
Okay, he's kind of like
the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, the number of steps that's required from my mind to your mind, it could take a few. There are some conventional steps, and now some non-conventional steps. The publishing business has changed a great deal in the past 10 years.
Well, I mean, the thing that I've known about anything that I find that's really difficult is that if I break it down into steps, then it's not as difficult because I can concentrate on one step at a time, and I can break those down a little bit too and find help with the ones that I don't understand or I need help with. So like, what's the first step? I mean, obviously the first step is to write the novel. Let's assume that we've written the novel and we have a manuscript. What do we do after that?
Well,
or is there something I need to know while I'm writing the novel to make it more easy to publish, maybe?
Yes. First of all, if you have an idea, the first thing to do is check it out. Now we check it out on Google. We used to have to run to the library and see how many other people have written on the same subject.
Okay.
And then you have to start brainstorming with yourself about how your take on that subject is different and how the reading public might want to read it because it is different. You can say the same thing, but better, and might get some readers. But if you say a similar thing or similar idea, and it's got something added to it, you have a much better idea. Let me give you an example. Just yesterday, actually,
please.
A person sent me a book and said he was very adamant about it. He said, and very enthused about his book. And he said, I think everybody in the world ought to read this. Well, I read it. It's a very short book. And I said to myself, and then I eventually said to him, we've covered this subject in probably hundreds of books. And how is this different? And so I wrote him a little critique and said, do some research and tell me how this one is different from this book and that book and that book and that book. So why should a reader be interested in it if it's the same stuff as I read 5 years ago or 25 years ago?
Gotcha.
So anyway, then you take it out of your mind. If we say yes, by the way, I did that as the acquisition editor for the Expressive Press.
Okay.
I have many hats. Where are my hats?
I'm wearing them for you.
I'm an actual acquisition editor for the
As an acquisition editor, you would read a manuscript and then say, and initially say, look, here's a way to like further your idea here, to make this more marketable, make this more saleable.
Yes, exactly. Well, I sent that one, as they say, back to the drawing board. I haven't heard from the guy yet. I only did it this morning.
Gotcha.
So he'll be back to me in the next day or two. And one of the reasons he'll be back to me, I think he's making the mistake of being in love with his manuscript.
Yes.
And you can't do that, as you know.
Yes.
You can't fall in love with it.
You have to allow people to critique it. And, I always say this, if I give somebody something to read, I'll give it to my family. They can read it. They're not going to critique me though. They're going to say, "Oh, good job.
Yeah.
You're a writer. That's great." But that's good for my ego, but that doesn't help the writing. I need somebody to tell me where it fails. I need somebody to tell me the weak points. I need to strengthen it. So tell me the protagonist doesn't sound like he would say that in this particular instance. That's helpful critique.
That's helpful critique. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you need that. I have a series of 4 reviewers that I use for many of my books. And I expect them to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And they are, as the cliche goes, sometimes they are brutally honest.
I wouldn't mind that. A brutal is okay because there are brutal readers out there, and if you can satisfy them, then your fiction, or well, I write fiction mostly, but that your writing is stronger.
Yes. Well, after you get this idea out of your head, and everybody says, "Okay, it's a great idea," you write the manuscript. Comes out in 8 by 10 pieces of paper, right? And it's usually written in something like Word, or what are the latest ones? I don't know.
Google Documents, they have writing software.
There's all kinds of programs that you can use to write your book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And you have to break it into chapters, and then you have to figure out what are the salient selling points of the book. So you have to write a cover letter, and you have to write a cover letter and a proposal to a publisher.
Okay.
The cover letter has to be a very succinct 1-page, 3 paragraphs, let's say, really, really tight synopsis of the points that you're trying to tell your readership and why the readership will be interested.
Okay.
In other words, every publisher today wants to know if they can make money on your book.
Right.
So you have to tell them, here's why your readers will want to read this book. And I got to go back go ahead.
Oh, so is this like a sales pitch? Like say, like the classic scene where you walk into a Hollywood director and you say, "Oh, our movie is E.T. meets the Princess Bride," and you try to give them a 10-second blurb, and then maybe a couple paragraphs out. This is in written form, so you can do a couple paragraphs after that. But you want it to be like a 1-page cover sheet, like one sheet?
One sheet. Okay.
Wow, that's got to be difficult for a lot of writers, I think.
My most popular writer on the Expressive Press, when I asked him to do that, he couldn't. He literally couldn't. But his book was so well done, that we let it slide, and now it's our bestseller.
So, how about that? So there's an exception to every rule, but you want to be able to do this.
You want to be able to do that, and then what you need to do is do what they call a proposal, and a proposal talks about a set series of, and it's much longer than a cover letter, by the way. It gives you the title. You have to have a catchy title. You have to have a catchy subtitle most of the time.
Yes.
You have to have a synopsis of the book that goes into the back cover, what the book is about. And then you get into the hard stuff. Who will read it? Give me a profile of the readership.
So your target audience, maybe.
What's that?
So like your target audience.
Well, that's your target audience.
Okay, this is going to appeal to 20 to 30-year-old men, or
yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, yes, yeah. My books, for example, don't appeal to 23-year-old women. They appeal to businessmen usually in the 30 to 50 range.
Gotcha.
The Ferris book, though, appeals to a much broader audience.
That would be a wider appeal, yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Then you have to go, there's another section in your proposal. Who's the competition? What book for the competition? And who wrote the competition? It's important. Let's say you're writing a legal mystery. Your competition is John Grisham.
Right.
He wrote a similar book. You're kind of deep shit on that one. Okay. You compete with somebody like John Grisham,
Not going to fly.
not going to fly too well, though. But also, you don't want to do things like compete against the Bible. That might be a little difficult as well.
So I'm not writing a new religion, is what you're saying. Okay.
Not writing a new religion.
Oh, all right. Well, there goes that idea.
So, therefore, you've got the target audience, the competition to get the target audience's interest, and then you've got to write a chapter by chapter synopsis of the book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So like a heavy outline.
Yeah, it's a detailed outline. You have a title, a subtitle, and maybe 4 or 5 lines of this is what it's about.
I see. Well, it's really interesting because I write from an outline. So when I write, I almost always write from an outline. And so if as a writer, save that outline, that's going to help you later with your business proposal.
Yeah, it'll help you a great deal.
Very nice.
Very, I think you're unusual, Pat, in that you write from an outline. I always recommend to my students, especially up at the university, said, you don't have to write from an outline anymore, especially on a big paper like 20 page or like a 20-page report or an essay, 50 pages, something like that. The way word processing is set up, and everybody I think is listening to us knows this, you can start in the middle of the book and branch out in either direction. Matter of fact, you might start in the middle of, let's say, you might label it chapter 6. And at the end of the book, it turns out, and when you're done writing it, maybe chapter 12.
I see.
But that's word processing has allowed us to do that. When we had to type on paper and then carbon paper, and that was a little bit more difficult.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I've never, very rarely. I mean, in my college days, I did use an old Underwood typewriter to write some papers, but that I very soon after I had a fiction writing professor who said invest in a word processor, and that's what they were back then. PCs were just starting to become popular, so I'm kind of dating myself there. But when I write from an outline, one of the reasons I do use an outline is so I can do that. So if I wake up and I say, oh my gosh, I have a great idea for chapter 6, I'm going to write that today so that I don't have to feel like I'm obligated to write through from beginning to end. So that, and I will write through at the end because you have to make, consistency. You have to, I don't know, I find it useful, but yeah, so I can jump around on my outline and just say like, this is what I want to write about today, or what I feel like I'm inspired to write about today.
And of course, the outline is also flexible. At that stage in life, it's probably not set in stone. Okay. And I do that too, Pat. I wake up in the middle of the night and I get this idea.
Yeah.
So I'm sleeping on the 3rd floor and writing on the 2nd. So I jump out of bed, turn the lights on, and I at least get the idea into the manuscript somehow, or into the outline somehow.
Yeah.
So that I don't lose it.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. If you wait till morning, it's gone sometimes, and you
can't do that.
Back Tara, my significant other, she'll often complain. Well, not complain, but she'll often note. She'll note that I heard typing at 3:30 last night. Yeah, you heard typing at 3:30. That was me.
Well, the other thing I do and have done for many, probably 30 to 50 years, I have a tape recorder or a recorder sitting next to my bed.
Yeah.
If I wake up in the middle of the night, I have an idea, plink, I talk into that tape recorder.
Yeah.
I never write it because the next day I can't figure out what I wrote.
Oh, because it's illegible.
It looks like scribbles.
Yeah, that's that. This has a voice recorder. Almost all of them do. Sometimes you have to download it, actually. Sometimes it's not pre-installed in the software. But one of my most popular videos on this channel actually is is about how to use your voice recorder. And yeah, it comes in handy because most people have this on their person at almost all times. So, you know, you can be in an elevator, you can be, you know, in the shopping mall parking lot and just, you know, something comes up, put it down, put it down, you know.
Well, I've gotten my best ideas, I think, either in the shower or walking the dog.
It's always somewhere where it's inconvenient. We're not around a pen or a piece of paper.
You carry that thing with you all the time.
Yeah.
When you're writing a book.
Yeah.
You always go back and forth. You know, I'm finishing a book right now. It's 25 or 7,000 words right now. Wow. And all of a sudden I had an idea. I think this famous professor from the University of Pennsylvania wrote something about this. Wow. And I want to hear his thoughts. Okay. So this morning, I got up about 4 o'clock this morning. Okay. Grabbed that book off the shelf. And I got to tell you, he gave me some great ideas, like putting in Benjamin Franklin's autobiography in the book, you know, that kind of thing.
Nice.
So he gave me some great ideas. So I borrowed his ideas, but I put his ideas into my own words so that I'm not plagiarizing.
Sure. That's important, though. That's an important thing to note. I think some people have maybe a blurred concept of what plagiarism is. So from a legal standpoint, as a publisher, tell me what plagiarism is. Like, can you tell me? I mean, I think I know what the definition is, but you know, if somebody's out there right now as a writer, if they're okay, can they quote? If they quote something from another work, how do they do that?
Okay, you can quote other people without notification, without crediting, up to, I think it's now 3 or 4 lines.
3 or 4 lines.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I'm not too sure. Those rules change all the time.
Okay.
The other thing to do is when you give him, let's say, a whole paragraph, you have to say, you know, taken from XYZ book by ABC, and give them total affirmation for that. So,
okay. So if you attribute, you can quote, as long as it's in quotes, you give an attribution to whomever the source is. You can use that in the body of your text.
Yes, you can.
Okay. So
in the book that I'm writing now, I've done that, I don't know, 3 or 4 times now.
Right. So for an example, so if I say something like Elon, if I say something like Tesla is not going to take Bitcoin any longer. That's something that Elon Musk said this morning on the news, I guess. So I don't have to attribute that to Elon Musk. But if I use his words and I say something like, we are announcing that the company Tesla Incorporated will no longer be accepting payments for our new model cars, blah, 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 with the cryptocurrency, in quotation marks, Elon Musk, 13 May 2021 release, news release, something like that. Okay, gotcha.
You have to put that attribution either in the text right where it is, or put it as a superscript and then a footnote, or right. Superscript and an endnote.
Right. So if you're writing like a scholarly work, you can have notes at the end so it doesn't disrupt the flow of the reading. But
there are only 2 ways to attribute us, and that's a footnote or an endnote, and both of them have their bad points, good and bad points.
Yeah, because at some point, if you want to know, you have to go to the back of the page. If it's in the back, if it's at the bottom, I mean, yeah, I read a oh God, it was a tetralogy of the Peloponnesian War by this really great professor from Yale called Kagan, and Donald Kagan, he's just amazing.
Amazing, I agree.
But have you read them?
Yes.
And some of you could tell I was out of my depth. I was reading this as a college freshman. It was obvious that the book was designed for postgraduate level readers who knew Greek, because half of the footnotes were in Greek, and And they took up more than half the page sometimes, the footnotes, because he would say, in his body of his text, he would say, and Sphactria, happened and the Spartans were cornered and they didn't have any water. And of course, Thucydides says, blah, 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 and then that's in a language that I don't read. So that was really interesting, but yeah.
Well, I really dislike that.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, it really narrows your audience.
Yeah, well, I think it was for a narrow audience. Yeah,
must have been very narrow. How many people speak Greek?
I don't know how many people read this.
Yeah.
It was 4 books. I don't know how many people got through all 4 books. I did. I didn't understand everything, but then he went.
I hate it when the audience throws in foreign words.
Well,
I mean, even German and French, which I am somewhat familiar with.
Yeah.
But I'm not all familiar with it. When they throw in foreign words and don't tell me what they are, in other words, they think they're dumbing down if they do tell me what they are.
Well, I mean, this was obviously something he had to write for some reason, and then it had to publish it. But then later he went on and wrote a single volume, popular, for popular consumption or more popular consumption, because how many people read about the Peloponnesian War anymore? But that used to be
a while ago.
Well, that used to be really big when we were in a bipolar world where it was like Soviet Russia versus the United States. We looked at a lot of different conflicts like the Second Punic War, and we looked at the Peloponnesian War, and we tried to model our world out on that and see what happened in the past to see if we could get some clues. So history repeats itself, sort of. So we could get ideas on how do you live in that kind of environment and survive, and both civilizations survive, because that's not what usually happens. Usually one civilization doesn't survive,
Well, yeah.
I got us way off topic. So
okay,
after that, you want to, so
we have a cover letter and a proposal, right?
Proposal, right.
This could be, let's say, 20 pages. It could be 3 pages, 20 pages, depending upon how detailed you make the proposal.
Right.
Then you got to send off that cover letter and proposal to the publisher who might be interested in the topic. You got to go back to Google, or used to be the library, and you look under publishers self-help, or publishers history, publishers the Peloponnesian War.
Okay.
So and then you decide, you have to find out who the acquisition editor is, and get their email and their U.S. mail. And a lot of publishers won't accept email. Sometimes will, sometimes they will, sometimes they won't accept U.S. mail. So
there used to be a volume called The Writer's Market, and it would have that kind of information in there. And a lot of times it would say no unsolicited manuscripts. Okay.
That's right.
So that's where an agent comes in, right?
An agent is a good thing, but that's you're running to the same thing there. No unsolicited manuscripts.
So the agents won't take unsolicited manuscripts.
Yeah.
So what's the value of an agent, or do you need an agent, or?
You don't need an agent anymore.
You don't.
You're used to, but you don't anymore.
I see.
You could go directly to the publisher.
Okay.
But you got to find the right person to send it to in the publisher.
I see. Okay.
And the best way to do that is look at their personnel.
If somebody sends it to me and I'm not the right person, I'm not going to go, oh, here, and give it to them. You have to send it directly to that right person in order to guarantee that anybody's going to look at it.
That's right. You've got to get it to the right person.
And that's the acquisition editor.
Well, yeah, the acquisition editor in a small publisher, there's only one.
Okay.
And then there are acquisitions editors. There are lots of acquisition editors, and something I'm guessing now, but Simon & Schuster probably has a dozen acquisition editors. Fiction, nonfiction, self-help, how to commit suicide, that kind of thing. They have special acquisition editors. Others have one acquisition editor, and he gets a submission, takes a quick 30-second look at it, and sends it off to Joe Blow and say, what do you think? Now, I'm the only acquisition editor of the Expressive Press.
So who do you send it to?
Excuse me?
So you don't send it to anybody?
No.
So when you read that you're the final, you're the buck stops here, as it were, right? So,
I say yay or nay right there. But I take it back. I could be undecided. But the book that I got yesterday, nay. I mean, it didn't take me more than 20 minutes to say no.
Gotcha.
The content was thin, skinny, trite, and the writing was awful.
And it had been
what
done.
do I want?
And it had been done before too, right?
Oh, well, yeah, that's what I said, trite.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I guess.
A copycat. And but the writing was awful too. And it just it didn't have anything going for it. So I sent it back.
Gotcha.
On the other hand, about maybe 3 weeks ago, I got a book. The guy had already made a book by going to Kinko, and it's a fiction, but he sent it to me thinking that maybe I could put it on my website, maybe edit it a bit, and then publish it myself in a different form. And it was sent to me at the request of a mutual friend, and I couldn't put it down.
Oh, nice.
I mean, it was fantastically done. I mean, the story was great. Great dramatic arc, great foreshadowing, great character development. I just literally couldn't put it down. I couldn't wait to get up in the morning and start reading it again.
Wow.
But it needed a good copy edit. The guy's handling of commas and semicolons was just awful.
Yeah.
It needed a good copy editor.
Yeah.
So I'm supposed to talk to him again this week and see where we want to go. To top of that, it would make a great movie.
Yeah.
So here we go. I may be in the fiction business. Anyway, once you get the cover letter and the proposal written, okay, you have to send it to a publisher. Now, there are several kinds of publishers that you have to decide what you want to do here. A traditional publisher might take a look at that, and if they like it, they will create a book and advertise it for you and take a big chunk of the royalties.
Right.
And you will become either famous and rich or neither. And one or the other. And,
all right.
but they will take a year or more to do that.
So realistically, just for people out there, especially younger people that are aspiring writers, maybe older people that are retired and writing, or people that wrote a book, over the last year, how slim are your chances of being famous or rich as a writer?
You can't even see it.
They're infinitesimal, right? I mean,
you're infinitesimal.
Yeah,
last time I checked, which was only 3-4 years ago, there are 3 million people in the world who call themselves writers, professional writers. I am in the top 15%.
Good for you.
No, people always say that. But that means that 450,000 writers are ahead of me. 450,000. Okay, so there are a lot of writers out there. Believe me. And getting more and more every minute.
I used to say in college, everybody and their grandma is a writer, and it's true to an extent. But here's the thing: there are a lot of people that call themselves writers, and maybe they do write, maybe they write, but they don't finish. Right? So they never.
These are supposedly people who write and get paid for it.
Okay, gotcha. So these are people that have been paid professionally at least once. Gotcha. Or maybe on a regular basis. Gotcha. But
I'm sure there are a lot of people who call themselves writers who don't get paid for it.
Well, there's that.
This guy who gave me the book yesterday, I don't know who's going to pay him for that.
Right.
And I don't think he's written anything else.
So
but he probably called himself a writer.
Sure.
He also manages half a dozen Pizza Huts.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, that's not easy. That would actually make an interesting. There may be some interesting stories there about pizza delivery. But I don't think so. I'm off topic. What was I going to say? Oh.
Well, let's go back. We have the traditional publisher does this.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now we have what they call the Vanity Publisher. And you send them a manuscript, and there's one right here in downtown Pittsburgh called Dorrance, Dorrance.
I've heard of it.
And they will take your manuscript and they claim that they will edit it and then publish it. Okay, but my experience and the experience of other people that have used it, and this is not peculiar to Dorrance, they do damn little editing, and they just take your manuscript pretty much as it is and make a book out of it, and then they'll list it in their catalog and hope that somebody buys it. But they're going to charge you. Let's say you want 10,000 books. You want to put your inventory. They don't keep an inventory. You keep it. You know, and they'll charge you for 10,000 books, and you put it in your garage. Now, that listing in your catalog probably is not going to sell any books to speak of. But you think that's done, and you can say to your friends, "Wow, look at me! I have these 10,000. I have written this book."
Pass them out to your friends and your family, and say, "Here's my book." So,
Yeah.
so that's one way to do it. I mean, but when they're talking about editing, though, they're not talking about the copy editing that you were talking about. They're talking about layout and format, probably.
Mostly.
Yeah. I mean, I have a retired friend who's a retired English teacher. In fact, I'm supposed to interview her tonight, but I think we're going to do it another time. She, so she'll be, I'll make sure I link that here, but she is amazing. I mean, she can't read anything, a newspaper, a blog, an online article without correcting it. Like, that's just the way she is. And she knows all the rules. She reads style books for fun. Like, she enjoys that. So like, that's just the way her brain works. You know, she does crossword puzzles. She has very analytical, and she loves language. So that's the kind of person you need to you know, they're looking for syntax, but mostly they're looking for punctuational errors and things of that nature.
I do the same thing, Pat. I can't read anything without trying to correct it, which it takes me probably twice as long to read a novel.
Right.
I would have done it differently. It always comes into my head. I would have made this sentence differently.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have put this in passive voice. I would have put it in active. I do it
you
all.
You read it as a writer or an editor. Yeah.
I do all the time. Everything. Billboards. I used to laugh and said, I edit billboards. So, and I do.
Billboards and headlines. I know a couple guys who work at the Post-Gazette, and headlines are tough, like, you know, but if you're good at them, you'll get people to read that article.
Yeah,
and
right.
How do you get somebody's interest in 3 or 4 words? That's poetry. There's an art to that, you know?
And the crazy thing about it is the headline doesn't have to have anything to do with the body copy. You check that out sometime.
As long as you get somebody to read, right?
As long as you get somebody to read.
That's the point of the headline, is to get them
somebody's attention. Yeah.
That's right.
No.
That's right.
I used to teach in my classes, you don't write a headline that says potatoes are good for you, and then write the body and how turnips are wonderful.
Right. Right.
But it happens a lot.
On YouTube, they call it clickbait. So people will make a sensational claim in their title of their video, just so people will click on the video. And then once they're watching the video, the tendency is they'll stay watching the video.
They watch it, yeah.
They call that clickbait. So what's the third way that you were talking about?
Well, we have a hybrid publishers like me, you know, the Expressive Press. We have 30 books on the website, roughly. We've got 4 more coming out this year.
So you do about 4 a year.
Huh?
You do maybe 4 a year.
Yeah, I don't do too many. Yeah, 3, 4, 5 a year. That's tops. Got 4 coming out this year. Already had 1, and now we're going to have some more.
And the name of your publishing firm is?
My publishing firm is The Expressive Press. The Expressive.
The Expressive Press.
Yeah, .com.
We'll make sure I link that down below. Okay. So the hybrid way is what you guys do.
I will very often grab a manuscript if I like it, and I think I can make money on it, if I can sell it. I will act as a traditional publisher. I will edit it, make it into a book, set it up on my website, set it up on my list, push it on Amazon, get ads on Amazon, ask people for reviews, do all the things that a traditional publisher is supposed to do. And by that time, the writer has not spent a dime, but I have to have faith in the book.
Yeah, it has to be a good product.
If I don't have faith in the book, I will read it again carefully and say, okay, I will pick up half the cost of producing the book, or I'll ask you, the author, to pick up the entire cost of picking up the book.
What would that cost be? Like, I know it probably varies, but what would you say? Is it in the thousands of dollars? Is it in the tens of thousands of dollars?
But to make a book,
Huh?
Yeah. To design it, format it, design it, make it look like a book.
Well, let's say you read my book and you're like, well, I'll do this for you, but I'm not going to lay out any money. How much am I paying out of pocket?
Well, that depends on the size, of course, and the number of visuals, all kinds of things. The George Ferris book that we talked about last time.
Sure.
That was $2,000.
Okay.
That was inexpensive for that book.
I could see somebody laying out $2,000 to get their book like published and promoted on Amazon. Sure, I could see that.
The Pete book on my website, in my press, was more like 4,000.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff that had to be in there.
So let's take the other extreme and say, like, you find a book and you really like it and you think, I'm going to promote this, and you put $4,000 behind it. What kind of return on investment do you get? I mean, do you usually, I mean, I know it varies, of course, but like, in order for you to be confident enough, are you expecting 100% return, a 400% return, a 5,000% return?
I tell you the truth, Barry, we're not a very well-run business.
Well, I'm glad you admit it.
We expect a return, yes, but we don't really know how much.
It's too ambiguous.
Barry Wolf's book about human resources management, we didn't think that was going to sell at all, but we probably have a 500% return. Okay, we had to do very little. He's a good writer. We had to do very little to make it into a book. We had to do very little design for the cover. It's very simple but catchy, and Barry did all the other work, and Barry did a great deal of promoting through his own Facebook and other social media. So we have a big return. He hasn't gotten a return yet because he's gotten a little bit of return, but he hasn't gotten a big return yet because the Expressive Press spent thousands of dollars advertising him on Amazon and getting people to write reviews. And we're still doing that because it's a big seller around the world. Australia, Japan, and Great Britain are big markets for us for that.
So for the writer, you need fame first, then you get fortune. So like there's no chance, it doesn't happen in reverse, right?
Most books today in our self-help genre are written as the basis for consulting business. Books are the basis for lectures, classes, seminars. Running into colleges and saying, here's my book, can I talk to the students?
I see. So it's like a companion book, or it's like something a credential for your resume.
It's a credential for your resume.
I see.
I have two for my classes.
Got you.
I have two books, The Power of Writing Well, The Power of Being Articulate, and The Power of Writing Well, and they come together. They come as companion books.
So that gives somebody an idea what you're going to talk about when you like give a lecture. So at least they know that you're serious enough that you had written a book. So you're not just some guy that's going to get up on a podium and start saying stuff without having had researched it enough to like publish a few books. Sure. I could see where that would be helpful. Absolutely.
Well, I use my textbooks, those two books, in my classes now with the architectural firm that I teach. And also when I was teaching at Duquesne University and at Carnegie Mellon.
Nice.
Those were our textbooks because I wrote them specifically for the engineering, construction, consulting business.
I see.
I'm not going to teach you how to write the great American novel. My writing books don't do that. They teach you how to write nonfiction,
right,
and business stuff. You want to write a memo, a letter, a proposal, a report. This will give you a heck of a good basis for doing.
Gotcha. Very nice. All right.
Very, 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 very focused, if you will, on a market. But that's my business is very well focused, my lecture business. I get a lot of money for teaching. I get no money for selling books. Matter of fact, for many of my classes, I give them away. I lectured last year at a group of graduating civil engineers at the University of Pittsburgh. And I showed up with a box full of textbooks. I gave it, everybody got one. Okay? And so that when I was lecturing, we're talking about a 2-3 hour lecture. When I was lecturing, I could say, I expand on this point on page 33 of your book. Let's look at it. And everybody can go to the book, page 33 of the book, and we can go from there. Okay? So the books are the basis for my other businesses, and many people have done that.
So in and of itself, publishing a book does not necessarily mean you're going to make any money, but it may lead to other opportunities which could make you money.
Yes, yes.
Very nice.
Yeah. All the consultants, the self-help consultants like Tony Robbins, and what I can name me a few others, they have written books, usually half a dozen of them at least.
Sure.
And they make their money. They make their money lecturing. They charge a heck of a lot of money for the lecture, but also they have a pile of books there, so that if you want to buy one, you can buy one right there.
Yeah, but if you're paying $10,000 to go see Tony Robbins, like what's another $50 for a book that he's going to autograph? You know, yeah,
exactly. The book is peanuts.
I mean, you could use it as an anchor on your yacht. You can use it as ballast. So, yeah. Well, hey, Tony's a great rags to riches story.
What's that?
Tony Robbins is a great rags to riches story. The way he
he is. But those are the three kinds of publishers, if I can simplify it.
Gotcha.
Now, many people are just taking it down to the local Kinko place and they say, here, make me a book.
Yeah.
Kinko guys will design you a simple cover and turn your Word document into a book.
So what about Amazon? What about self-publishing on Amazon?
You got me stuck there. I think they did that at one time, but I'm not too sure they're doing that anymore.
That's how I did mine.
You did? Yeah.
Yeah. You upload the document and then you can design a cover. I don't remember if they provide editing services at a cost or not. I had my friend, do the copy editing, and then they'll print on demand. So, so either it's mostly Kindle downloads. And then if somebody actually wants a hard copy, they'll print one out, and you can determine the price for within reason. I mean, there's the lowest price is determined by what it costs them to make it or what margin they want to make it. But they suggest actually to new writers that you charge as little as possible because you want to get your name out there, right? You're not going to make money off your first book probably, and not a lot, but it's interesting, and you can get out there. I'll link my novel down below, but a couple people buy it a month. It's not like I'm not making that much. I'm not making any money off it. Let's put it that way. Yeah, but.
You don't write a book now to make money.
But at least it's out there and it's not sitting in my drawer anymore, like it was for the last 29 years when
You can point at it and say, look at me.
Yeah, I mean, I could do that. But
I very often call my Expressive Press, my company, my end of life ego trip.
Yeah.
But I'm not making him. By the way, I just got my tax form yesterday. Yeah. And I asked my accountant, I said, how much did I lose on the Expressive Press? He said, about the same thing you lost last year. It was about $5,000. So I lost $5,000 last year on the Expressive Press.
So you don't make any money off of this?
Even with a very popular book on the list.
Yeah.
But I make a hell of a lot of money teaching because I have 2 books on the Expressive Press. And that supports other books on the Expressive Press. The book that I'm finishing up now, I'm tweaking it now. I don't expect to make any money on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had 4 reviews, 4 independent reviewers. They love it. Okay. I was concerned that I was really wasting my time writing it. And I told them all, I said, I'm not too sure this book has any value at all.
Yeah.
But they loved it.
This is your very own book. So here's the thing with independent reviewers. Now, do you pay them for their time?
I don't, because my independent reviewers are former top executives that I knew when I was in business.
So they're doing it as a favor. But if somebody else wants to review, are they going to pay for it? So what's to prevent? I mean, if I'm being paid by somebody to review a book, I'm going to give it a favorable review, right?
Yes.
So when you read the back of like a Stephen King novel and it says, this is the best novel ever written in the history of mankind, like that's all like paid nonsense.
It's paid nonsense, right?
I'm joking, but like, I mean, really?
There's an outfit called Kinkus Reviews, and they have, probably thousands of people who review books.
Yeah.
Okay? And you can pay them $100 a review, and I've done that.
Yeah.
And theoretically, they're objective.
Yeah.
And but I probably have done that with at least 4 or 5 books, and I've never gotten a bad review.
Yeah.
Never. They take that $100 and write something beautifully flowery, wonderful.
That might be fun. So if you're a writer and you like to read books, that might be a way to go too. You might be a review writer.
Sure.
Especially if you like to give compliments.
And lie.
That could be interesting. And well,
the one I got yesterday.
We'll call it, we won't call it lying, but
What do we call it?
Let's call it
Stretching the truth.
Creative
bullshit.
I'll take it.
But the one I got yesterday, literally, I got this through a mutual friend, and she was in the house this morning. We were talking about the book, and I wrote a 1-page critique of it. None of it any good. I was trying to be soft, but the reviews were not good.
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, what am I gonna tell my friend, the author?"
Oh.
Okay. Well, I told her point blank, you must tell that author the truth, or you lose your integrity.
Yes.
Right. And if you want to lose your integrity, you can bullshit, polish it up, polish up the reviews if you want to. But if I were you, and I wanted to keep sort of like I look myself in the mirror the next day, I would take my 1-page critique and I would give it to the author and say, an acquisition editor of a publishing company wrote this about your book.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Blame it on me.
Put some distance between the bad news and your friendship, because this happened to me multiple times. But I remember one in particular where a guy found out that I, had a writing major and said, "Hey, will you read my manuscript?" And I read it, and it was terrible. And I told him where it was terrible, and I told him how I thought he might be able to improve it, and I told him why. And he did a Vanity Publishing thing. He was not, he wasn't a writer, but I told him, I admire the fact that you were able to take the time to do this. So if you take a little more time, you're going to be able to improve this by 50%. And keep getting people to give you honest opinions. And he was a customer of mine at the restaurant. And after that, I never saw him again.
That's a shame.
Yeah, his ego was attached to that manuscript so much. That must have been the novel that he had been trying to write ever since he read Isaac Asimov when he was 10 years old. It was a sci-fi book, and it had some good ideas, but they were all stolen. They were all other people's ideas that he had mishmashed into an amalgamation of his own. And it could have been a new concept, but it wasn't developed yet. So it was a first draft, and he thought it was done. And it was a shame. But
well, that brings us back to the idea that writers definitely have to have thick skins. You have to be able to accept realistic criticism. You have to. When I first started to write 40 years ago, 50 years ago, actually, something like, 50 years ago now, can you believe it? I was scared to death to sit across the desk from a critiquer, my customers. I was writing speeches and things like that for executives at that time. And I was scared to death. It took me probably 3 months to get over that because I finally realized that I know more about it than they do.
Yeah.
So,
but you're giving them, if you're writing a speech for somebody, that's their product. So at the end, they get the final say. But, so you're a technician, you're like, okay, what do you want? You want to portray an image? Do you want to convey facts? Do you want to, what are we doing here first? And then you work with that. But the thing with writing that you brought up with it, I find is interesting. You have to have almost a split personality because you have to be egotistical. I mean, egotistical is not a great word. You have to have enough of an ego to think that you have something to say that other people want to hear, right? Otherwise, why write at all? And yet you have to be humble enough to accept criticism without getting your soul crushed,
Yes.
So, it's a tough game, it really is. It's a tough game, but
yeah, it is. I got to tell you this story.
And not everybody's going to like everything. So like, you might have written the best sci-fi novel ever, but if I don't like sci-fi, that's, that doesn't work. But tell me your story. I want to hear your story.
Well, I have two, if I can remember them both. Anyway, I wrote about maybe 25 speeches for a big meeting of executives, 250 executives. Okay. Anyway, one of the top guys in his company, this is a multi-billion-dollar company, right? And he gave up and he gave a speech and he got wild applause, blah, 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 blah. One guy grabbed me at the end. He knew why I was there. He grabbed me and he said, "You must have written Harry's speech." And I said, "Well, I'm not supposed to say that, but if you pick that up, that's okay with me." And he said, "How did you know that?" And he said, "Well, it made sense. So I know he didn't do it himself." So,
hey, at least that CEO or whoever that executive was smart enough to know that he needed help, right?
That's how I made my career. When people were smart enough to know that they couldn't write properly themselves, and it took them far too long, and their productivity depended on me. And it was perfect.
That's a good CEO. I've met a few
win-win situation.
I've met a few CEOs, and a good CEO knows how to play to his strengths and delegate his weaknesses to people who are strong in that area. That is the key. And I mean, I'm sure that's in management 101, but like, why don't people do that? Some people try to do everything themselves because they think that they're the only ones that can do it best. And after a company gets so big, you can't do that anymore. You have to accept help, and you have to realize there's going to be human error.
People who think they can do everything themselves are the ultimate in arrogance.
Yes.
And arrogance can get you in nothing but trouble. But I've written thousands of words about that. Yeah. But the other story I have to tell you is another executive, great guy, I loved him dearly, good golf partner. He insisted that paragraph, a couple minutes of a speech that I wrote for him, he didn't like. So he wrote it himself. And there he was in the middle of the speech. And here comes this 30, maybe 60, 80 seconds of his writing. And his style is so much clumsier than mine that we were at rehearsal and he was reading a speech and he came to that and he stopped and he waved his papers like this. And I was in the audience, we were rehearsing, right? He said, "Pete, who wrote this crap?" And I said, "You did."
That's your part.
I said, that's the only part of that speech that you wrote. And he looked at it and he said, "Yeah, you're right. Can you rewrite it?" And I said, "Sure."
Well, that takes humility.
Yeah, it does.
That takes humility.
Really good.
That's something I learned in one of my senior seminars in fiction, was that we would read each other's work out loud. So there were 7 or 8 of us, and you did not read your own work. You let somebody else read it. And that's when you saw the mistakes. You could see where people were fumbling over the language. You could write, and you had time to write notes as someone else was reading it aloud. And I think it's so important. I mean, obviously speeches, but anything really, try reading it aloud and you will find errors, and when things are well written, I mean, especially fiction. But also I took some poetry too. So you will find that there are words, the English language can be beautiful,
Yes.
but you have to work at it. It's not French. It's not Italian. Not everything rhymes at the end of the sentence. It doesn't have that lyric-y sing-song feeling naturally, but you can make it happen in moments if you really work at it. But you have to read it out loud. It's so much easier to spot mistakes if you read them out loud, I think. For me,
I have 2 quality checks. When seeing as writing is a process where we're making something, it's a manufacturing process, if you want to look at it that way. I have 2 quality checks, and one is to read it out loud to yourself. And people say to me, well, I can't read it out loud on my desk. And I say, well, go out to your car. Read it out loud in your car. And when you stumble, you got a problem.
Do something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Circle it. Yeah.
That's one quality check. Okay. The other one is, for many people, is to pin your document on the wall and stand back. Even if you have to stand back so far that you need opera glasses to read it, because it gives you distance from your words. Sounds corny, doesn't it? But I know people who've
done that.
Huh?
I've never done that.
It works beautifully for some people.
Interesting. I'm going to try that. I have a bunch of billboards that I bought to put ideas on and kind of like flowchart kind of patterns. But
put your document on there.
Yeah.
And read it. You don't have to read it out loud that way. But I know one guy who actually uses opera glasses. He has to get far enough away. So he has to use opera glasses to read his documents.
Well, that's awesome, because now I can go out and buy some opera glasses, which I've always wanted to have some.
Okay. Well, you don't have to. Just walk around.
No, opera glasses are cool. I definitely want those. That's like now I take to wearing gloves because I don't want to use hand sanitizer all the time when I go into stores and things. So I wear gloves, and then when I go back to my car, I take the gloves off. My hands are still germ-free, theoretically. I love wearing gloves. I've always wanted to wear gloves in public, and now I get to. It's so awesome.
Well, the women back not too long ago wore gloves as a fashion statement.
They did, but it was impossible for men to do so. But now it's not, which I think is awesome. So,
well, back a long time ago, they did.
They did a long time ago.
Men wore gray gloves with their black suits.
Sure, if you were
all suits were black.
Jane Eyre.
Snap.
Yeah.
And then when somebody insulted them, they pulled off their gloves and snapped across the sheet.
That's exactly why I want them. And in fact, I have some leather gauntlets here that would make great, like, slap across the face, like.
Yeah, oh yeah. Okay.
Somebody would get hurt if you slapped them with that. So.
Well, anyway, I challenge you to a duel.
I guess.
Can I tell you anything more about publishing?
No, but if you ever want to fence, I know how to fence, so we could do some dueling sometime. So that'd be fun. I think that's all I got. If anybody has a question, put it in the comments below, and then maybe we'll do a follow-up. But this has been a great talk. I appreciate your time, Pete, and your wealth of knowledge as always. And I always like talking to you. We always have fun and enjoy.
Yeah, good time. Yeah, good.
Do you have anything you want to add?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, all right.
I guess we could just say, if anybody out there is listening and has a great book, let me know.
Pete's always looking for a good book. So we're going to put the contact information to the Expressive Press down below. And to the audience, smash like for me, because that helps me. And see if you can do something nice for somebody today without getting caught. Okay. I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.